Welcome back to another episode of the Distil-Nation NZ podcast, the podcast all about New Zealand spirits for you, the consumers. And my name's Tom, and your name is?
I'm Cameron, and I think it's fair to say, and it's particularly pertinent with this episode, we are fierce champions of New Zealand spirits.
I would say so.
Across the board. And you listen to this podcast because you also like New Zealand spirits. You want to hear about Kiwi distillers and the things that are happening, whether you love gin or whiskey or rum or just all of it. This is the podcast for you.
Yeah, I mean, today we're talking about something where we actually had to go out and champion the category, the industry, which is quite cool, but also it was a bit distressing, if I'm honest.
It shouldn't be this hard.
No, it shouldn't. I run the Junior Collective, and sometimes every time I'm in there, people come in, they look around, and I always ask, "Have you been in the shop before?" And they say, "Oh, yes, I have." Okay, so you know the deal. Or they say, "No, I have never been in." And I say, "Well, this shop is all Kiwi spirits. Everything in here is made in New Zealand." And they look around for a sec. They go, "Really?" And I say, "Yeah, absolutely. That whole wall over there is all gins made in New Zealand. Over here we've got the whiskeys." And then a lot of them will run over to the whiskey side and get all excited and start to learn about that. And it's always interesting to know how many people don't know how big the industry is, even though it's small. How big it actually is,
I mean, comparatively for our size, population, everything else, I think it's fair to say. And that's something that I love about heading on in, is that there's always something new, and I'm like, oh, when did that come out?
Yeah.
Oh, when did these guys start producing a whiskey? I didn't know they were doing that.
Yeah, it's quite cool, So, on this episode, what happened is, you and me, we peruse the old TikTok.
We do.
We are a bit of doom scrolling addicts, if you will. But what happened is I came across a stuff article. You must have come across the same one, probably.
And independently of each other, we both got fired up.
Fired up. I mean, I don't usually make a video of a video, but this time I did because it was Lloyd Burr on Stuff checking out the new bar in Parliament, which was recently refurbished because it had been closed for a time. Because it was used for offices or something, eh?
Yeah. So the big story was that this bar has been reopened. They've spent, it was somewhere in the realm of $7 million worth to refurbish it, bring it all, open up a bar inside of the Parliament buildings, and the camera did a big old sweep of the shelf behind the bar. And could you see any New Zealand-made spirits inside the bar where our politicians and everybody else goes? Supposedly the heart of New Zealand governments, and was there any New Zealand spirits on that shelf?
So on that vertical TikTok video, I could not see anything.
No. I did have it, so I also made a video as well, pointing out how rude it was, and I'd also gone some hunting for some landscape shots, and I had some other people contact me too. There were roughly 35 bottles on the shelf, which, if you're looking at a bar and you're covering the whole gamut of different spirits, it's, about par for course. And of the roughly 35... there was a bottle of Cadrona liqueur.
Yep. And
I couldn't make out which one it was.
I think the one on the end was the Reefton vodka. I'm thinking it's the Reefton Distilling.
I think it's the Reefton vodka.
Vodka. Either that or the Tayberry liqueur. But I think it's the vodka.
No, I think it was, well, it was clear, so I thought it was a gin. So, two.
Yep, two spirits. Yeah.
See, and I don't know if you remember, Tom. I am aware that it's a different government, but if you remember, 5 years ago, and the campaigns that the government put out about the importance of supporting local, about keeping money within our economies, going back to supporting our local community, and look. Apologies if you're a regular listener, because this is very much banging the same old drum. But when you buy a bottle of New Zealand spirits, you're supporting that. Well, for starters, they might be supporting you as a retail store.
Yeah.
They're then also supporting that distiller.
Mm-hmm.
That distiller employs people. They will have somebody who is doing marketing, somebody's doing labeling, somebody who's doing sales. There'll be a number of jobs associated with that. You take another step back and there is people that are physically printing labels, making bottles, corks, that are shipping. You take another step back and there are farmers who are growing grain and harvesting, and maltsters who are preparing that grain. So there is a big supply chain that when you buy your bottle of spirits at the end of the day, that actually there's a massive chain of people and jobs and communities that you're supporting, which, and I am being unfair here because I saw a bottle of it on the back shelf, when you buy that bottle of Jack Daniels, that money goes straight overseas.
Yeah, all of it, yeah. I mean, a little bit back to our excised, dollars, but we don't go down that road.
No.
But the fact is, yeah, I was pretty appalled when I saw that. But I just want to step back 1 minute, because how much did you say this renovation cost?
Well, that was, and so I think that sum has come out of, for starters, there was a bar.
Yeah.
Basically, for as long as there has been a Parliament building, there's been a bar.
Yeah.
And if you want to go back to House of Commons in London, they have also always had a bar, so it's it's probably something that just migrated over. So I think that sum that I read about was the cost of shutting it down, renovating the original offices, which forced this bar to close, and then reopen. So I mean,
it's offices and all this included in that renovation cost.
Yeah. So it's in an email that I will get to later.
Okay.
But yes, that $7 million figure, I think, is for, yes, it's the refurbishment of the bar, but it's also for opening up the offices that forced the first bar to close in the first place.
Yeah. So the bar is called Pint of Order. Did we say
Correct.
that? Yeah. Pint of Order. Look, they did a great job on the video. It looks fantastic. Looks like a nice, cozy little place to have a drink. But of course, you and we were just a bit surprised at the lack of local spirits, considering the spirits on the shelf weren't high-end spirits by any means. They were really just the, let's go buy the cheapest bottle of every.
It's what you would call your well bottle if you're working at the bar.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with the product at all.
Yeah.
But you're not breaking the bank. It's not top shelf. It's yeah. I mean, okay. For starters, I struggle with this attitude between some of the really, really conservative attitudes towards alcohol in New Zealand that people have, that also this government holds as well, and yet they're like, well, we need a bar. Of course we need a bar. This is our workplace.
Yeah.
How many other workplaces in New Zealand actually have a bar?
Yeah.
Not many.
That can you even go to work and have a drink, even if they don't have a bar,
Yeah.
It's an odd one. I will say too, I remember when I lived in Ottawa, Ottawa is the capital of Canada, obviously, so they did have a bar in the House of Commons at one point. It ended up across the street, and then I think at one point there were more bars in the city than like anywhere else in the world per person sort of thing in Ottawa, just because all the politicians had to have their drink all the time. So it's a politician thing. Maybe an older
well clearly not. Clearly not, as we'll get to. So Parliament has a restaurant, and this restaurant is called Bellamy's. And I'm just reading here, so that John Bellamy, he was the housekeeper of the British House of Commons, 1773, sets up a dining room for MPs over there. Now, actually, their Parliament is so much bigger than the politicians. You've got all of the supporting roles, and then all of the other people who work in there as well, administration, the journalists, the people who are coming in. And so it is an administrative and a logistical task to, sometimes house meetings do go right into the night.
Mm-hmm.
I'm certainly not begrudging people. They're not getting it's a free lunch in the sense that, they're paid with taxpayer dollars and all of that kind of thing. But ultimately that they still have to pay for it. So I'm not against the fact that, all right, there's actually, inside of the Beehive there's a cafe and a restaurant, and there's also a different catering service. And that when you take into Impact, everybody who works in there, sometimes they don't have an opportunity to go out and get lunch. I'm not begrudging people their opportunity to have lunch, to have something delivered to their desk. This isn't.
Yeah.
Let's just establish that. So let's go. Here we go. So Parliament was originally in Auckland, and so the earliest Bellamy's, they called the restaurant Bellamy's after this guy in London who set one up. So that was 1854, and that was a lean-to attached to the rear of the General Assembly House in Auckland. And so then Parliament moves to Wellington, restaurant moves with it. So basically, for as long as there has been a Parliament, there has also been a restaurant. And this is where it seems like, and maybe this is kind of part of my bone of contention, do you need a bar? It's a separate kind of building, or a separate room. This previous one was called Pickwick's, but by all accounts nobody called it that. It was on the third floor in room 2. It had 3.2 on the door. Everybody called it 3.2. And this was, in my reading, it was a place where politicians could go, where you could socialise across the aisle, that your reporters and everything else in there, you could drink in there too, but it was Chatham House rules that, you overhear two parliamentary colleagues talking on something, you don't use it as an opportunity to then eavesdrop and then run away and report. But everything else that I was reading was saying, like, okay, for starters, this bar closes at 8 o'clock. Oh, well, okay, fine, but, I guess if you want to go somewhere else, there are so many bars within walking distance of the Beehive that, there are heaps of places that you could go.
Yeah.
But also, if you've ever been into the office of an MP, they're pretty spacious.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've all got shelves, they've all got fridges, they've all got... That actually, if all you want to do is socialise with your staffers or have an informal kind of thing, basically people were kind of doing that already in their own spaces. Which then brings me back to, do they really need a bar?
It's an interesting point, does anybody really need a bar? Now, if you pull it back,
Sure.
As soon as you said this to me, it is just one of those social constructs of, the millennia, really. It's just who really wants to drink in their place of work, in where they actually do the work. It's something about leaving where you work, leaving where you live, to go to a space of comfort and I think that's what it would be. A place of it's called the third place, isn't it? Isn't that what it's called? This is a thing. This is a social studies thing, and it's like and this is something we've lost as a generation, is the third place. We've got our home, we've got our work, right? But now what we've lost as a generation is that third place, which used to be like the pub, your corner pub, in the UK. It used to be, one of the bars. It could be, it's that other place where you go to be around community, if you will.
That's outside of work and home.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So I think, that's what it was, probably. But why, if you have a restaurant could be a bar too, but don't know why it needs to be separate necessarily. But, it's tough. I mean, hey, look, these are traditions, and it's there. I'm not against them having a bar at all. I think it's great, actually. I think when you're working in a high-profile environment like politics, having a little hidey hole like that is not a bad idea. Having a place that's not as open and exposed as a restaurant, that's not out in the public streets. I think it has its advantages in that line of work, particularly.
Sure. Yeah, especially if I thought that it was actually providing a space for bipartisanship building, that if it was actually a space where you could still be like, hey, I don't agree with you on everything and we sit on opposite sides of the house, but if this is a place where actually we can humanize one another.
David Seymour and Chloe Swarbrick hanging out in Pint of Order.
Yeah, if I actually thought that was going to happen, then I might have been a wee bit... Because sometimes it just seems like everything... The language that comes out from Parliament around alcohol is so negative and so, in some respects, quite nanny state.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, okay, so this is good enough for you, but it's a different rule for us, is what I'm hearing.
I see kind of where you're going with that, for sure.
Yeah.
And the other point that I'd like, I think that just... I think it's great they have it. I think there's a place for it still in that line of work, but it should be a place to champion local stuff as well. If I'm going to invite a local, one of the what's their ambassadors, let's just say, come on to the Pint of Order with me. Let's have a drink and we'll have a chat. I'd like to introduce you to the Cardrona, American barrel whiskey. This is just made here. That would be more fun than grabbing the bottle of Jameson that they can get in their home.
Anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think there were a couple of New Zealand beers on tap, and I cannot speak to their wine list. I don't know. But again, I think this comes back to people very, very generally, very, very broadly, seem more comfortable with the idea of championing New Zealand's wine industry than what they are with spirits. It's just kind of that, it's a bit stronger, it's that bridge too far.
And it bugs me too, one thing about wine and beer is that there's more chemicals in wine and beer just from the fermentation process than there is in that little glass of spirit, right? So you've still got all your formaldehydes, your methanols, like all the bad stuff, small doses, don't get me wrong. And in wine you've got sulfites and stuff, which now everybody's really up against as well. None of that is present in this bottle, like we can distill it off. The methanol's all gone, the formaldehyde, it's all gone. None of this is transferred over. It's a very clean product, and you're not drinking as much of it.
Yeah, I think if somebody walked into a bar and said that they'd like a gin and tonic in a pint glass,
you might blink an eye.
I think people are going to look at you, and I don't actually.
And if you're really thirsty, absolutely order a lager, and get that crisp lager down you. But if you're there to have a long conversation for the night, I can absolutely see sitting there with a small dram of whiskey, maybe two. Over a few hours, you're going to be doing much better than if you had those 4 or 5 glasses of beer or wine.
Or wine. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And you'll feel better in the morning, I tell you what. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. I just thought, that is the spot where if I'm in politics and I'm taking someone out for a drink, the first thing I'd want to do is here's a local brew. Now let's get down. Whatever we were chatting about. I'd say that's what I'd want to have. As that is the centerpiece. This is what starts the conversation.
But it's a perception issue, right? It's absolutely a perception issue. And that when I went onto the Bellamy's website, so the website about the restaurant, guess what? They're talking about using local ingredients and local produce, and hey, we want to do this. And why are you doing this? Because it comes back to that supply chain that I was talking. Ultimately, it goes if you want to support New Zealand farmers, buy the things they grow and produce.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So why you would have you clearly know it's the right thing to do and it's a good thing to do because you talk about it in other areas, and yet the attitudes that I was seeing to some of the comments on the videos that I was posting, where one person, so funny, one person said, oh, well, how dare you tell them what they can and can't stock in their own bar, if they prefer Jack Daniels then they should be able to have it. To which my point is, like, if you want Jack Daniels, go to one of the many bars that are within walking distance. You don't have to go far. I want to make it very clear, I'm not commenting about Jack Daniels as a product. I'm just using this as an example of
It's a bog standard.
It's a bog standard made by a very, very large company overseas.
Yeah.
Go to any privately owned establishment and you can get it there. But if
Parliament is special.
But it is.
It's unique. It's a one-off,
They're getting money from us as taxpayers, from local New Zealand businesses, from alcohol excise. This is all money that we are putting in.
Yeah.
And for them to say, all right, well, actually, instead of putting that money back into the community, back into our farmers, back into local businesses, we're actually going to, goodbye.
Send it overseas.
Send it overseas. Away you go.
Yeah, literally anywhere but here, by the looks of it. Yeah.
So do you want to pour that? And I'm going to read out an email because I was fired up enough that I thought I'm going to contact my local member of parliament.
And who is that?
Well, you can work it out because I live in Christchurch, which is fairly central to everything around here. I said, Kia ora. Let's be honest. Given the current economic conditions and the hardships many Kiwis are facing, it's not a great look to see that the Beehive has been renovated to open a bar. What looks even worse is that the pictures of the bar show no New Zealand-made spirits on that shelf. I will just put in a wee point of order here to say that in different photos down the very far ends of the bar,
We figured it out after.
there are in fact two. If taxpayers and alcohol excise is going towards Pint of Order, seems to me that the very least that politicians could do is make conscious choices to support local businesses instead. And I got back, thanks for your view, Cameron. I can see your point of view. The fact is that the bar was relocated from a larger space because David Seymour wanted new offices in the Beehive, which cost $7 million, a considerably worse spend in my view. Thank you for your comments on the spirits. However, I am not sure even Cardrona can match a good Scotch yet. Which tells me a few things. One, you haven't tried, and you haven't looked very far. And you know what would be what would help? What would help to show you that there are plenty of fantastic New Zealand spirits that will hold their own on the world stage? Put them behind your bloody bar and try them. So
the problem is too, many of these MPs would have tried very early, releases of whiskies in New Zealand. They would have, they might have, they might have seen Cardrona, in the small bottle days, or maybe the first releases, and maybe he didn't like that release, but the fact is now Cardrona has a lineup, and the one I've just poured is the American barrel. This is now in their 750 ml bottles, whatever they are. I bought this one in honor of my son being born last year.
Lovely.
So, and it's a special bottle to me. I tried it when the reps came in, and I loved it. And when the time came that I had to pick a whiskey, I thought, I'm getting that one. Out of all the whiskeys I could have picked. And whereas with my daughter, a few years before that, when I was still not quite, figuring out which New Zealand whiskies were my favorite, I actually went with a Lagavulin for her. The Offerman Father edition. But no, this time, it was this. And I just think if they have tried it, it's probably not. They're probably not up to date on what's come out. And I still think there's a place for these in that a special place Parliament. It's unique. I just got to say, I just had a sip of this, and I just got this like orange zest.
Oh yes,
it's this beautiful orange zest. It's a really soft sort of whiskey. This one.
There is a creaminess to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, a creamy orange marmalade, but.
This I haven't actually had a dram in a while, and it's really, really nice, this one.
And I think, to get back to another point, this is not trying to make a comparison to say spirits from New Zealand are better than others, or to try and how does this stack up against Scotch. That's anybody that's still doing that, it's kind of missing the point. The point is, we're doing some great things in New Zealand. Mm-hmm. We want to celebrate the spirits that are being made in New Zealand. And when you buy New Zealand made spirits, that's money that is going back into our community and is supporting a whole bunch of different people and jobs all along the supply chain.
Yeah.
I know I've said it a few times, and I'll probably say it again because I really want to ram that point home. That's and I'm not even telling them which spirits they have to buy, although I think it would be a fun exercise to say, like, okay, if you're going to stock that back bar, what would you put in it? But yeah, I wasn't at that point. I wasn't even trying to advocate for somebody that I know, and it is hard when I know so many of these local producers.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to tell you which one to buy. Just buy something.
Now, I was just having a look at the bottle, and I hadn't really realized before, but it's actually 7 years old.
Yeah.
They don't advertise that necessarily. You can do the math, obviously, but that's a 7-year-old New Zealand whiskey. That's really impressive. And I just think it's top-notch. At 52% too, if you were to put this in a rocks glass with some ice, you've got a really nice sipper for the evening. There's definitely room for a little bit of water in here.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So on my side of it,
yep.
You contacted your local MP. I contacted mine. Unfortunately, I haven't heard back from him yet. He's not much of a drinker, so I don't think this is an issue close to his heart. But he does know of my distillery, and he knows that this sort of stuff is close to us. I think I'm the only distillery in his district as well, so But on top of that, I also contacted Lloyd Burr, the reporter on stuff, just to say, like, hey, did you actually notice while you were in the bar? Did you take note of that? And he did say to me, I did notice that. I did think that was a bit odd. He seemed to think it was just the stuff left over from the old bar that had just been brought across, that was just in storage. And then he gave me the contact of the head of hospitality for Parliament, who I also reached out to, and just very nicely, mentioned it, and I did offer my services unofficially or officially, however they needed, with help, and have not heard back from them, unfortunately, though. So, at least, New Zealand's small. It's not hard to get a hold of somebody. It's a matter of getting someone to reply sometimes.
No, exactly.
But it'd be interesting to see if anything comes of our little crusade.
Well, it's just, I genuinely did not think it would be a hot take or a controversial take to say that New Zealand Parliament should support local business.
And you are right too. They do have local beer. I did see they have they introduced New Zealand wines a while back. It was heavily North Island wines, but it's New Zealand nevertheless. So, there's no reason for them to support the other, alcohols and not support us, the distillers. Look, I don't expect them to have a bottle of moonshine on the shelf in Parliament, but certainly a nice bottle of whiskey. There's a few of them around.
There's heaps.
Yeah.
And that's okay. So, yep. Because I know it would be such a double standard to tell them that they've got to have whiskey on the shelf, and then they go out and buy something, and people say, "Oh, you got that one?"
Yeah.
Like, I think the joke that I made to you was like, I don't expect it to be so Kiwi that the whiskey on the back of the shelf is the Pōkeno Tōtora cask.
No.
Like, that's a special occasion bottle.
Yeah.
It's an expensive one. Yeah, I mean, look for that foreign dignitary, that ambassador that is coming over. It would be amazing to pull out for them, but I wouldn't expect that to just be on the back.
No. Well, should we play this game?
Okay, let's go.
Because here's how I would start, and
Yep.
I think you got to have at least 2 whiskeys on the shelf, right?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. I would pick this Cardrona release here. This is a great release from them.
That would be a top shelf one, though.
It would be a top shelf pick,
Yeah.
exactly. My other pick would be, and I struggled with this one today because there's 2 other ones I'd pick, but or 2 I'd pick between. But I think the New Zealand Whiskey Collection's South Island Single Malt
Ooh.
is
Yeah.
just a really classic there's a bit of depth to it. You know,
Yeah.
there's stuff to explore in that one. Well priced, good story behind it. I think those are the 2 whiskeys I'd pick.
See, this could be a one or the other, but I would be going for either the Divergence Pinot Barrel or the Pōkeno Revelation. And my reason for picking both of those is that they are both aged in New Zealand red wine barrels.
Yeah.
In which case, you're getting a twofer. For there's, you've got the New Zealand whiskey, but it's also, that New Zealand wine element. Both of them are fantastic and also very well priced for an entry. So maybe you wouldn't have both of them necessarily, but I think either one of those,
Yeah.
just so that, for that double the Kiwi element,
Yeah.
one of those would be my pick. Yeah.
Yeah. The 2 would have to be different from each other, So I think you're right. I think a red wine barrel one and a more ex-bourbon would be 2 ways to go. Or maybe it's a matter of picking a Thompson Manuka smoke.
Oh yeah.
Something really sort of local but not too harsh, just something sort of to introduce you to a Kiwi attitude.
My top shelf pick, though, which I think, don't quote me, I think probably similarly priced to the Cardrona. If you really want one that is just going to make people go wow, it would be the Waiheke Whiskey Cantankerous.
Oh really, eh? Yeah, Cantankerous.
I just think I think there are some politicians who are quite fond of Glendronach and what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so if you were going down that flavour profile, and you were going to get a real kind of top shelf Weldham kind, that would be my pick.
Good choice. I'm a big fan of Ceres 2 though. That one is if that's another one I'd pick from Waiheke. That's a tough choice, eh?
It is.
Yeah. It'd be a tough 2 spots to fill on the shelf. But those are all good options, I think. Yeah.
What about gin?
This one you've got to go local botanicals. I think I don't know if it's so much about the bottle in this case, because I went through a couple bottles in my head and I thought but then I thought botanical wise, not so much there. So I'd probably go with I think Mount Fife would be a really good one. Probably the Woolshed, I think. And it sounds, to most people, they hear the Woolshed, just trying to create a Woolshed sort of effect. It sounds gross, but it's actually an amazing gin. It doesn't smell at all like a grungy Woolshed, but it's got the funner botanical elements of a New Zealand gin, and it mixes with anything. It's just clean. It's well done. It's a well done gin.
See, I think also for the visual and for the story element, as well as for the recognition that they have achieved on the world stage, which is truly incredible, I think having the Bluff Dry Gin up there would just...
It would pop, absolutely.
It would pop, and it's got that story of Kiwi spirit, New Zealand independence, and just a very good, solid, dry gin.
Oh, it is, yeah. It's my wife's favorite. It's one of my top 5 for sure. I was going to say Bluff.
Okay.
But my only problem with it, Chris, I know if you're watching, if you're listening, I'm so sorry. There's no problem with it, mate. It's so good.
Yeah,
we love your gin. We love it.
Let's be careful.
But to be the Parliament gin, the 3 botanicals are none of them are local. They're all just bog standard. Sorry, Chris.
But I think you're coming at this because if there was going to be two gins, I think having something that was more that's got your dry locked down.
Yeah.
Then what's going to be, and I think the Fife is something that's
absolutely
a bit more.
If we're picking 2, then this makes more sense.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the dry category, what would you go for?
Well, if I could say Bluff, I'd say Bluff. But I think I would pick. You know what? I think I might pick Greenstone Gin from Kiwi Spirit Distillery.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a great gin.
That is.
It's a dry gin, but it's still got this little bit of, I think it's kawa and stuff like that. So it's still local botanical, but very dry style. Yeah. What about you for your funky?
For a slightly more funky one, and I am fully aware that we're really championing the South Island here, and you know what? I'm not going to apologise.
No.
I'm not going to apologise. I think, and I'm tossing up here, just to have a wee bit of variety, either the Horopito or the what's the pink one called? From number 8.
The hibiscus.
The hibiscus, yeah. I think some people would appreciate seeing a pink gin behind the bar.
Yeah.
But I think one of those 2 is going to provide you with that more floral kind of out there, botanical type gin.
Absolutely.
And also, having spoken with Julian, they really do make an effort to pick things locally, grab things locally. Yeah. They've got a real focus on that.
And shout out to Rifters, who just won world's best Navy strength with the Royal Navy gin.
Yep.
Also, they make their entire lineup is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
A Wildian, they continuously win every year. Who else? There's Roots has won world's best gin. There's too many to pick from.
I mean,
it would just be like, okay, it happens that we picked upon this one. Not that everyone else's isn't as good.
Oh,
but
no.
This is what we picked today.
Ask me on another day, and I'm
yeah,
going to
exactly.
have a different answer.
Exactly. Yeah, it would depend on what I saw that day, what I'm thinking about.
Oh yeah. Oh, most definitely. The Humdinger Citrus Gin is just
fantastic.
It strikes that balance between I want something more than dry, but I don't want something that's too funky, too out there, and that strikes that middle ground so well.
Yeah.
This is most definitely. We're not putting anybody down.
But it's just
too hard. We've got to make some.
Yeah,
we've got to
if we only
pick
pick 2, Yeah. I mean, and we're thinking about these on the spot, really.
Yeah.
So if I really sat down and had to think about it, it'd be a couple of days exercise. So
look, I'm going to jump in here before you say it. If it's good enough for Air New Zealand, it's good enough for Parliament. Get the golden rum from National Distilling.
Absolutely,
Company.
Fantastic rum. You probably don't need more than 1 rum anyway, and it's a good price. Cool bottle, good story.
Yeah. What else are they going to be?
I mean, Last Light rum. I'm really a big fan of them, but it's probably too big of a mouthfeel for maybe somebody into their regular rums. That'd be for more the rum enthusiasts.
Yeah, it's a specialist type of
But that golden rum Port Aurora is fantastic. Yeah. Vodka. I mean, I think in this case you're picking more of a brand story than anything. That's a tough one, to be honest. I don't know if I could pick one necessarily. Would you pick one?
I can say this now that I don't work there anymore, but I worked a lot as a client, we have Broken Shed Vodka as a client.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm really familiar with their story and what they're trying to do. And so I think that's one. It's a lovely bottle. It's a cool story.
Oh, what? No, Good Bones, Vaughn.
Yeah.
That's it. There you go.
There's
vodka.
your pick.
Done.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how cool is that? That's a story. You want vodka? Here's a cool vodka.
That's an even better story.
Yeah. And you're supporting even more and more and more local on that one. So yeah.
Oh, true. Which quick point of order again. That's the Vaughan's recycling used bread products, or not used, expired, stale.
Stale. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of
Old,
older bread products, and he's converting that into spirit. And yeah, that is, look, vodka for. I'm not a big vodka fan, but that was one when we poured that with his conversation, struck out for me was really that there was a texture and there was a flavour, and it wasn't just a quote unquote neutral spirit.
Yeah.
So there's some beautiful stuff happening there.
Absolutely. And I have a hot take on, I think, a tequila option. So tequila, obviously, the only tequila you can get in New Zealand is Kiwi Spirits Kiwi, which is about $3,000 a bottle. So that's not going to happen. However, my original moonshine is very similar to a white tequila.
Okay.
I would replace it with that.
Flavour-wise.
Yeah.
Now, I brought something, and I would love to see it in Parliament for the novelty value.
Okay.
As much as like just for the story and for everything that it represents to be served to politicians in Parliament. It would just be a kind of, I don't know whether dream come true, but definitely like a surreal moment.
All right. Right.
Hokanui moonshine. And we'll just put with the old... because you weren't available for my conversation with Jim, the head curator. That one's going to be coming out soon. What was also awkward was that, so it was just me talking to him, and typically we've got a fairly good thing kind of going where if one of us is sipping, the other one of us is talking. He was at work, so he wasn't drinking, and I'm sipping, so I would ask him a question and then sip, and then I'd try and find these spaces so that I could come back in and talk about the spirit. So one, I think it would just be hilarious if not only they had a moonshine, they had one that is just filled with stories of, like, this is built off the backs of Avoiding Taxman, and it's now being produced out of the distillery, which is based in the Hokanui Moonshine Museum. That's the original. They've also got a Manuka smoked, and I think it would just be, I'd love to do this a proper service, and a shout out to Jim to have a bit of a tasting on here, and just to say, if Parliament was going to have a moonshine,
I think you're right. I think they would,
having the
absolutely.
old Skull and Crossbones label on there would just...
That would be such a good conversation starter.
Oh, yeah. Where did this... Well, this one came about because we started to charge tax on spirits, and the McRae family down in Southland weren't too keen on that idea.
This is nice. So this is he did say it was all barley, right? Is that right?
Yeah, let me check. I believe so. It's a
from what I remember of old Hokanui.
Yes,
barley.
yeah. It is barley, and as much as possible they're using local barley.
Nice. Yeah.
So they are endeavouring to make this as local a product as possible.
Yeah.
This is the original here, 40%, and it's certainly when in my conversation with Jim, they're talking about how in future they will be looking to put stuff down in a barrel and do some kind of barrel aging and bits and pieces. They've got some really cool plans. However, the still that they have, he has described to me, and in his words, it's a kinetic sculpture and does not meet the traditional standards of a pot still. So even if they were to create something and age it, they couldn't call it a whiskey because it doesn't meet the pot still definition. I don't know if that...
Is there a column or something in the way, is it?
Look, it's a weird, funky looking thing. I'll send, we can look up some photos. But as a fellow shiner, what are your takes on this?
I got to say, at 40%, it drinks beautifully. The barley, it's definitely barley spirit. You can taste that. Barley's got this grunge to it, if you will. It's not it's not dirty or anything. It's just like it's really hard to describe. But when it's in a raw spirit form, it just presents exactly like this. And there's nothing offensive about it. There's really clean cut, clearly, and. Yeah, if somebody handed me a bottle of moonshine and I had that, I'd be very happy with it. You just can't get it, and I can't get over the label every time I see it. I love the label.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It was another case of they arrested a guy, and part of the incriminating evidence on him was that he had designed and made he had carved the wood block, so like a wood pad, and he had carved that, and then you'd put that on the ink,
right.
and then put that on the paper,
Yeah.
and put them, and make that as a label, and so so they've also got a Manuka smoke. You'll see that this is coloured, and I believe that they're doing. I think it's probably unfair to call it a rapid aging or a rapid maturation, but it's certainly been prepared with Manuka chips, which have given it the colour,
right,
as well as adding to the flavour.
Yeah, I think I've had this one before. I'd never had the original before, but this one, that barrel smoke, it's like a charry smoke to it. Oak, like definitely a fresh oak sort of smell to it. Yeah. It's sort of you lose a lot of the grain in that, but
Yes.
it's like shoving your face into a barrel. That's kind of what that reminds me of.
But it's got that. If you're a fan of Manuka, it's just got that lovely hint of
there it is.
That sweetness and the
Sweet grassy.
sweet grassy hint of tannin,
hint of honey.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's actually really nice. To be honest, I think this is better than the other one I had, because I've had it before, and this is better. So wow.
It's got a lovely sweet honey on toast kind of finish.
Yeah. Kudos, team. It's a lot better than I remember. Because I remember sort of thinking like, oh yeah, the Manuka smoke, I definitely get it.
Yeah.
But I found it a bit harsh. I remember, but this, no, not at all. And
it's funny because when you talk about moonshine, or in particular, like people would use, especially from down south, there was a guy I used to work with who did a wee bit of home distilling, and he would, make stuff, and we would describe that as Hokanui moonshine as using it as a byword of, one, he was making it at home, but two, it was high proof and pretty rough. And that was kind of a byword for describing it. Was kind of like, you are not drinking this for enjoyment, you are drinking it because it's getting you from A to B very quickly, and this is not that at all.
No.
This is very sippable, very enjoyable. You don't need to I don't feel the need to add any water to it.
I think it's well done, actually. everyone should try that for sure.
That's it. If you're ever on a road trip down south, heading to the snow, going to the ski fields or whatever, make a stop in Gore. Make a point of going to the Hokanui Moonshine Museum. It's the perfect kind of rest point on your way to Central Otago or on your way down to the mountains. It's yeah.
I do like that the URL is a government URL as well.
Yeah,
GoreDC.gov.nz.
Yeah. It's run by the council.
That's great.
Which it is. It's just fantastic.
Oh, cool. Hey, look, I think we've got the point across here. Parliament, MPs, Prime Minister Luxon.
But this shouldn't be a party issue. This
No,
shouldn't be.
it's not. Absolutely,
it's just
I mean, the party. Yeah, it's it's just. It's Parliament. It's everything in there should be local. It is the center of the country. It's the heart of the country. It's the brain of the country. Just support the people making it in the country, and it just seems pretty straightforward to us. But hey, look, we've given you a few recommendations. If you're watching this and you need some recommendations, reach out. We're here to help. This is what we love. Like I say, if we sat on this for another couple of days, I reckon we could really tune in exactly what are the best options in the Pint of Order.
Oh, like if you gave us a budget to work to, we would absolutely come back with
crush it. Yeah. So get in touch.
But if you aren't in Parliament and you are also looking for just some recommendations on New Zealand spirits, definitely you can reach out to us at Distil-Nation NZ on all of your social channels. But you might also like to get in touch with the Juniper Collective.
Absolutely, yep. You can find us at the Juniper Collective NZ on Instagram and Facebook, and junipercollective.co.nz is our website, and soon to be a very own little New Zealand spirits tasting bar. Woo! So very excited about that. And if you come to Christchurch, which I've met a few of you from the podcast who have come to Christchurch and said hello, and luckily I've been in the shop when you did,
awesome.
And it was very fun. So please continue to do so, and just reach out anytime. Yeah.
And if you want to kind of try something before going ahead and buying that bottle, hi, my name is Cameron, and I run Discovering Dram's whiskey tastings, but not just whiskey tastings. I've actually got a few different types of spirits events coming up. You can come along, try a few, have fun, learn something about the story in a very relaxed type of environment, and you will then be in a much better position to say, oh, well, I'm yet to find a New Zealand whiskey that stacks up to a Scotch. Well, actually, you're going to try some, and then you will be in a position to know, hey, actually, this is one that I like, and I think I might head on out to the Juniper Collective and get it.
Maybe we will invite all our local MPs in Canterbury to a tasting.
Yeah, let's see.
Jerry Brownlee would love it. I see he's always in the
goes.
shop looking around. So yeah, we'll get Jerry Brownlee in. All right, thank you very much for listening, everyone. We hope this was fun. If you have any questions, please reach out, and we hope you have an excellent day wherever life finds you. And cheers.
Cheers.